Good day everyone, I am Jemerick Zapanta and today I will be discussing about Philippine curriculum development. This is basically the continuation of the report of Jane Laput. So to start, let us first discuss about learning materials. So for our learning materials, we have the Instructional Materials Development Council. So the IMDC is responsible for the production and distribution of instructional materials. So during 1987, the government has the responsibility for the production and for the distribution of learning materials around the Philippines. However, when we had the Book Publishing Industry Development Act or the Republic Act 8047 that allows private sectors to develop more materials, teaching materials, and then afterwards distribute it to different institutions. But the different publishers needs to submit their materials for the approval of the International Materials Development Secretariat. And after that, if they already have the approval, they can proceed with the distribution of the materials that they've created. So basically, institutions, different institutions, more specifically private institutions, can now purchase the different materials that was produced by the book publishing industry development. So after materials, now we have evaluation. So for our evaluation, we have the National Education Testing and Research Center. So they are tasked to administer national achievement tests for students. So the national achievement tests for students are administered annually towards the end of the semester. And students who are leaving the educational sector are the ones who are taking the national achievement test. So the result of this test are the basis for new educational reforms and new policies. So we also have school-based assessment. So these school-based assessment are really important. So we have several purposes on why we are creating or conducting school-based assessment. So first, to improve the teaching and learning process. Next, to identify students' strengths and weaknesses. Next, to report students' progress to parents. Next, to determine the students' subject area performance and achievement level. So for the school-based assessment, it is really important because it will give the opportunity for teachers to improve the way they teach students. It will also determine the strengths and the weaknesses of students in a particular subject area. And of course, the most important thing of doing assessment is to report the standing of the students to their parents. Remember that we have report cards that is usually being submitted to our parents every at the end of the grading period, and then our parents are going to affix their signature, and on that report card that contains the grades that we have in each subject area. So in order for our teachers to fill in informations in that report card, they need to give assessments to us to determine the level of competency, the level of awareness that we have in a certain subject matter. And of course, the last purpose is to determine the subject area performance and achievement level. So remember that we have different remember we have recognitions at the end of the school year. So in order for our teachers to identify the level of competence that we have for the entire school year, so they need to conduct assessments. So assessments are being given through quizzes and also summative tests at the end of the period. So in that way, teachers would have the opportunity to rate their students and to also acknowledge those students who really performed well in a certain subject area. So after the evaluation, we have the issues and concerns in the curriculum development. So I have here the overview of curriculum decision-making process. So this is the table of the process of curriculum decision making. So we have aspects of the school curriculum. We have the central level, the department, the bureau, and the National Education Testing and Research Center. The regional division level, the supervisors from regions, divisions, and districts. School level, we have the administrators, the teachers, and the communities. So the aims and the objectives. So for the central level, their purpose is to formulate and determines educational aims and objectives supportive of national development and goals. So for the regional level, we have to formulate and determine specific vision and mission and objectives of the school, division, and district. And for the school level, formulates the vision, mission, and objectives of the school. So in this particular process of curriculum decision making, their main aim is to create a vision, mission, and objectives. So in that way, they know where they're going and they have a guide as to what kind of curriculum they're going to develop for a certain program. So next we have curriculum plan. So for the central level, they develop national education policies, standards, and programs for curriculum implementation. For the regional level, implements and adopts education programs to suit regional division needs and culture. So the central level will going to develop different policies and standard of a certain program, and then afterwards, after the develop process, the region or the division level will implement what they've developed from the central level. And then from the school level, the implementation budget of work based on the learning competencies modifies, adopts the curriculum to learners of different needs and abilities. So in the school level, this is where the implementation for students happens. So after developing different standards of programs, it is now being implemented in the school level to the students. So next we have methods and approaches to learning. So from the central level, they conduct research studies on innovative approaches and recommends those that are effective. So recommends strengthening of continued use of effective methods. For the regional and division level, we have conducts teacher training programs on strategies found to be effective, conducts research, field tests, and demonstrates new teaching methodologies. So for the school level, uses appropriate methodologies and innovative approaches, employs activities that enhance lifelong and life-wide competencies. So here in methods and approaches to learning, so the central level will conduct a research that will look for different methods for learning, different approaches for learning, and also to research if the previous methods are effective so that they can still utilize it. And then afterwards, if they were able to find new methods and new approaches, in the regional and division level, they will conduct now a training. So they will train teachers based on the new methods and approaches that was developed by the central level. And the implementation goes to the school level. So next we have materials. So from the central level, they exercise control over evaluation and distribution of textbooks and other educational materials. So this is what I've explained earlier about the materials. Next, we have the regional division level. So supervises the selection and distribution of instructional materials to schools, divisions. Ensures availability, adequacy of instructional materials. For the school level, supervises the use of instructional materials by learners and teachers and procures materials based on approved lists and adopts indigenous learning materials. So materials is one of the biggest issues in the academe, because there is a need for us for the Department of Education to develop more materials. More specifically, not just textbooks, because materials are not just textbooks. Let's say, for example, for science, there are different equipments that they need. Microscope. They need microscope in order for them to utilize it in their experiments. And not all schools have that kind of equipment. Not all schools have a complete equipment in their science laboratory. So materials here is one of the issues and concerns that we are facing in the field of education. So the role of the central level here is to exercise the control over the distribution and the production of materials, and then the regional level will supervise and select schools to whom they are going to distribute their materials, and the school level, the teachers would now observe they now going to observe the utilization of the different materials of the students. Specifically textbooks, they need to supervise and tell the students not to take good care of it because other students will still utilize it, and other equipments in teaching. So next and last, we have the evaluation and examination. For the central level, we have administers national examinations, conduct students' research on student performances. So this is now what I've explained earlier about evaluation, the National Education Testing and Research Center. So they are conducting national achievement tests for students who are leaving the educational area. And the result of this test will be the basis of new educational reforms. So for the regional level, conduct supervisory visit, provides technical assistance, administers examination. So for the regional level, it is usually being conducted by the supervisors to visit different schools. So for the school level, administers formative and summative tests and uses results to improve teaching learning processes, makes report of students' performance to parents and school officials. So this is basically what I've explained earlier about the school-based assessment, in which I explained the different purposes of school-based assessment. And most importantly, the part there wherein I explained about the report of students' performance to parents. So the evaluation and examination would really affect if we have material. So it would like create a domino effect. If one of these processes are not effective or efficient, so the entire process would really affect. Let's say, for example, in the methods, if they weren't able to find new methods of teaching, then probably materials would be old materials would just be utilized over again. But if they were able to find new methods in teaching, so definitely they would develop a new and accessible teaching materials. So that is for the overview of decision-making process. So next, we have the designs. So Philippines has one of the shortest time span for the completion of basic education. So this pertains to curriculum overcrowding. So in the reference that I've read, students has to study 7 out of the 8 subject areas in school, and this has been proven to be excessive. And also based on their observations, that science and mathematics, the content of these subjects cannot be completed in one school year. So there are teachers who would skip some of the topics, and that would result to students who are not that very much ready to be on the secondary level. So curriculum overcrowding happens if we have very limited time in the academe to study and to be trained by our teachers. Let's say, for example, now in this face-to-face learning, my sister, who is a grade 3 student, their class would start from Monday and it would end to Saturday. It would start from 7:30 in the morning and it would end up to 11:45 in the morning. So imagine the shortest time that they have inside the classroom, and they have 8 subjects. So they need to study that 8 subjects in, I don't know how many minutes. So just imagine, and these are grade 3 students. You really need to like slowly give the lessons, slowly make them understand what are the lessons all about. So that's why curriculum overcrowding happens, because we have a very limited time in the school, and this will result to students who are not that well prepared for the next level of their education. So next, we have the follow-up. So in here, there are 3 main concerns regarding the institutionalization of curricular reforms. And these are the local leadership, monitoring and evaluation, and sustainability. So for local leadership, usually local leaders have their own independent concerns or agenda. And unfortunately, giving extra fund to more educational reforms are not one of those. So that's why educational reforms are sometimes being neglected. and this result to different kinds of problem, most particularly curriculum misimplementation. So next we have monitoring and evaluation. So in here, this is usually being conducted by the supervisors in different districts. And this is also, sad to say, one of the activities that are not really attended to, because there were a lot of schools in a certain division. So there are times that supervisors cannot really attend those school, like visit school to school, from one place to another, because there are a lot of schools here in the Philippines. So next is the sustainability. So for the sustainability, financial needs is not the sole problem here, but also technical and management aspects are also problematic. So next, the curricular reforms in the Philippines. So there was a need for students to develop higher critical, logical thinking skills, communication skills, values development, and general manual skills for higher education or the world of work. So this report is based on the comprehensive appraisal report in the educational system of the Philippines. So it is also stated in the reform that financial difficulties are also present, because there are a lot of parents who are experiencing financial difficulties, and they are withdrawing their enrollment to private institutions, and they are transferring their children to public institutions. So that means public institutions should be ready to acquire new students from private institutions, and that also entails that they need to be prepared with their teaching materials, and of course with their different facilities. And lastly, the comprehensive appraisal report. So this is a basic reference for improving educational system. So this is a document that has different reports as to what are the things that the educational system of our country needs to improve. So next we have the reform implementation. So a new programs would bring a higher quality and an increased secondary education student intake. So these programs are program for decentralized education and the secondary education development. So these are the new two curriculums that was implemented. And these new programs are created to achieve greater improvements in the policy of education, and also to achieve greater efficiency and effectiveness in the implementation of the education system here in the Philippines. So the 1989 graduates of elementary education are the first students who are beneficiaries of the secondary education development. So next is the outcomes. So the program for decentralized education and the secondary education program has been implemented for the last 15 years. So since it is being implemented for the last 16 years, so it was a successful implementation of a new curriculum. So furthermore, it succeeded in improving the quality of basic education in the Philippines. And the curriculum is continuously undergoing refinement to ensure its relevance to the changing needs and demands of our society. Because as time goes by, there are different needs and changing standards that our education system needs to adapt. And lastly is the future prospects. So under future prospects, we have international assessment. So for the international assessment, so as of the moment, there are a lot of things actually that needs to improve in our curriculum. But it is now the duty of the central level to do more research for the improvement of our curriculum, for it to be more globally competitive. So that ends my report. So thank you so much for listening.